Next guest is a total boxing gentleman, and I don't often utter that. Originally an amateur with the now defunct East Lane Amateur Boxing Club, he went on and won the British and European titles at super middleweight, and was at his peak just before everybody seemed to be fighting for a world title. If he'd have been a champion now, he would have fought for several world titles and probably won half a dozen of them. He now trains fighters and works at the legendary Pedro Club in Hackney. Welcome to the first Bunce Boxing Hour of 2010. James Cook, MBE. James, how are you?
Steve, good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fantastic, fella. James, before I talk a little bit about what you did in the ring, which was memorable, Pedro Club now, do you actually have a boxing club inside the Pedro Club?
Steve, you know, the first thing when I went inside onto the club, you know, the first thing I put in was a boxing ring.
Oh, good. So you're getting lots of fighters coming through, James?
Steve, you know what, mate? We've got about 80 young people at night coming through that club. So we just want trainers and coach who want to help out at the Pedro Club. Please be free and just come down to the club and help us out.
Are you looking for coaches?
Steve, we're looking for coach, we're looking for trainers, matchmaker. Steve, we want them all to come down and help out.
Looking for basically the whole thing that would turn it from a boxing club inside a club to an actual boxing club.
Absolutely, mate.
No, I didn't realise that. So if you're a boxing coach in East London or anywhere in London and you're unattached and you fancy helping James Cook out, you can contact me here. That's london.sport@bbc.co.uk. Now, what about funding? How are you doing there, James? Because it's been a bit tricky over the years, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely, mate. The last couple of years has been mad. It's been great. Madness. Like, we had, was doing well up until about 2 years ago.
Yep.
You know, and then it all went down. But I must admit, Steve, it's great to belong to the ex-boxers.
Yeah, they're good.
Charlie Wright and Bernard Hart, who really help us out well, and then we have this young man who's secretary now, Pat Sand. I ain't have an argument with him yet, Steve, but he's doing a good job. He ain't upset me, I ain't upset him yet, but he's doing a good job for the club. He's getting some money in, so hopefully once we get going, people could start, donating some club. But that's the only sort of money we're keeping the club going, Steve. As you know, the last boxing club in London, our Hackney side of town, was Colveston over 20 years ago,
that's gone.
Absolutely, and it produced plenty of champions.
Did it ever, man?
Just around the corner, mate. So, like I said, the club got plenty of young people coming through there. So, yeah, definitely, mate.
So if people want to get in touch with James at the Pedro Club, as I say, send your emails in here, london.sport@bbc.co.uk, or call me 0207 224 2000. Make contact with me and I'll put you in touch with James. They're looking for, in fact, the entire structure of an amateur boxing club, so coaches, matchmakers, probably some people on the committee. Now, James, let me ask you a couple of questions about your career, because when you first turned pro, James, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. You weren't earmarked to be a champion. You had hard fights from the start, didn't you?
No, definitely, mate. But you know what, Steve? You know what get me through those hard fights? The training, the work, the discipline of being a fighter, the word professional.
Yeah.
That's basically what get me through. Definitely, being sort of a pro at that time, yeah, you're totally right. There was too many people out there who wanted to be champion and marked to be a champion.
Sure.
And be quite honest, even with the Mickey Duff and the Terry Lawless, I think when I went pro, I thought, there was guys out there with names I wanted to fight, so I went and found myself a little small manager somewhere, but that probably was a bad choice.
Yeah, well, listen, we're all geniuses the next day, James.
Absolutely, mate.
We're all geniuses the next day, but you finally got there by hook or by crook. You moved up to super middleweight. You've been a pro, nearly 9 years by the time you won the British title. No one's a pro 9 years before they win a title these days, James.
Steve, you're absolutely right, mate. You know what, Steve? I won the 7 year very, very early in my career. That was a final eliminator.
Yeah,
for the
saw
British
that.
title.
Yeah, years ago.
That's right, and I boxed my mate Earl Bummer Graham in 1988.
Yep.
And I got beat by Earl Bummer Graham, and I thought to myself, if I get beat by a British fighter again, I should retire. He was good. He was the world number one.
Yeah, not wrong.
The rest of the guys then was that great, but there was good fighters. There was great fighters.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So you went on from there. Now, of course, one of the things you managed to do early in your career was upset Michael Watson, who at the time was unbeaten. He was Mickey Duff's big golden boy, and you gave him a bit of a boxing lesson over 8 rounds.
Steve,
over 8 rounds, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, mate. You know what? Every time I speak to Michael Watson now, he says, have I got a video of the fight? I try to tell him when we fight, there was black and white TV. There was no video when we fight. When I moved into Hackney from Peckham, as you know, I've been in Hackney now for about 27 years.
Long time.
From Peckham, mate. And Every time I pick up the Eden Gazette, there was this Michael Watson, and I thought, Michael Watson, this name is getting on my nerves.
Driving you mad.
Absolutely. You know, and when the fight was made, Steve, I just lost a fight of pressure against Tamo Yusovita.
Yeah, out in Finland or somewhere like that. Yeah.
And so I was ready for Michael, and you know what? I think, you know, if I didn't fight Tamo Vita in that 10 round, I think he probably would get the best of me, Steve. But you know,
prepared you.
It did, and then that put me right back. But the annoying thing about me was I was defending the European like it was my world title, because no, I wanted to fight Michael Watson, Nigel Benn, and Chris Eubanks.
Yeah, they kept you out of that gang, didn't they?
Oh, mate, they did. You know, every time I see them now, come on, guys, I just want a share of it as well.
Yeah. So every time you bump into Watson, Ben, and Eubank, you say to them, "Listen, you were lucky. You were fighting. They were fighting for so-called world titles. You were British champion, and you were the invisible man."
I was British champion, I was European champion, I was number one in the WBA, mate. So, you know what I mean? And this WBO come out and they still didn't let me in.
You know, so it's a cruel business, this boxing, James.
It is, mate, but I love it, Steve, because I've spent
I love it too.
40 years in it, mate.
Hey, listen, you must have started like me when you were very young. Listen,
Steve,
James...
Steve, you know what, mate?
Go on.
I'm glad you said very young, because Eddie Nesta have an idea, think he's younger than me, Steve, when he's not.
No, listen, Eddie puts on face creams. Eddie tries to make himself look young. Listen, James, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And if anybody wants to help James and the rest of the people out of the Pedro Club, deep in the heart of Hackney, would be the only club in Hackney to become a British Amateur Boxing Association club. Make contact with me here, 0207 224 2000 or london.sport@bbc.co.uk. And let's get the Pedro back on the map. Elizabeth Taylor was a massive fan of the Pedro Club. She used to be like the secretary or the club, the chairwoman or something back in the 60s. Her and Richard Burton used to have fundraisers for it. How bizarre is that? And that was James Cook talking to me there, and it's an absolute pleasure, a delight to have James on the phone at any time.